Really weird at the camera. All right. First part, feet. Very, very underrated and often never looked after. You can do it sitting or standing. Ew. About 30 seconds to a minute maximum on each side. Let's just roll the feet out. Yes, this hurt and it sucks, but it's all so much more worthwhile come tomorrow. I rarely ever use a foam roller. Generally this stuff. Kettlebells, maces, clubs, barbells. That's what I use to release with. Because it has very little give in it and it gets in where I need it to.
With all body parts?
Pretty well. Yeah. Pretty well. The main thing I will say out of it is it'll be interesting bouncing ideas off Josh actually given his background, but my belief when it comes to muscle tissue work is not looking for the most painful thing that you could possibly be doing to it and sticking to it for as long as possible, because I actually find that sparks off a trauma response that causes you to bind up worse. And I've asked a lot of my massage clients and my therapy clients ever gone and had a really deep tissue massage? Have you felt worse after it than you did beforehand? They said, yes, it's taken me over a week to recover and I wasn't any better because there's so much stimulus that's gone in there. More doesn't always mean more. Less can mean more. And a few of you have done trigger point with me before. When we actually applied less pressure, we got greater release work out of people than just driving in as hard as you possibly could on trigger point. It's the same thing with your foam rolling. Going faster does not mean it's better. If anything, it actually means worse. But going to the real painful points and pushing as deep and as hard as you possibly can and really trying to make it painful doesn't mean you're going to get that release either. At this sort of thing, the way I like to think of it is show your body some love and care and just, be a bit more gentle with it. Beating the crap out of it doesn't always yield a productive result. So watch it all the time. People just get in and obliterate themselves with deep tissue work that's not necessary. I'm not saying it doesn't have its place, but for the most part, a lot of people don't need that. All right, calves. You can sit down. You can use it like a roller, or you can do what they call scrubbing. So one leg on top of the other for extra pressure if you wish. And you can roll, finding whatever point is iffy, and roll from side to side. Ow. But if you're going to roll, don't try and do the whole length of your leg, like your calf in one go. You see how my shoulders look as I'm doing that? Break it up into sections. So you're only going to sort of be smooth points. And now my shoulders are in a much better position. So the other thing I see that quite often people do wrong when they're trying to recover, they put themselves in constant, compromised positions thinking more is more. If you want something a bit bigger because the smaller ones aren't cutting it, because you need a bit more height, grab a bigger barrel. You can, with your traditional clubs, like the steel clubs and our modular ones where they have the little end cap to them, you can use them like a trigger point tool. It will be focused to a point, but given the fact that it still has quite a wide surface, it won't be as nasty either, because the smaller surface area that you apply pressure on with a trigger point, usually the more exquisitely painful it is. Usually. It's not always the case, but it's a general rule of thumb. The wider your surface area, usually the easier it is for people to stand it. Much as all this sucks, it's so much more worth it at the end of your training session. For me, the most important thing on any training session, even post-training session, if you can swap over to the other leg, is recovery. A lot of people put a lot of importance on nutrition, don't get me wrong, it is. But in my belief, it's still more recovery than anything else. If your body hasn't got time to rest and recover and put into place the changes you've asked it to, it'll never happen no matter how good you train or eat. Part of the reason why people lead to synthetic means like steroids and that's because it boosts recovery. So it means they have less downtime, but their body can do more. Not necessarily a good trade-off, but you get that understanding. All right, move up into hamstrings. About 30 seconds or so, getting them done. I tend to find when I'm doing hamstrings, I pick one leg at a time because you can generally keep your body in a much more stable and nicer position. I know these parts seem a little bit boring and mundane, but it's worth it when you've been swinging for the amount of hours that we've been swinging. Lean your butt on one side. So if you've got your right side on there, not fun. Bring your right ankle up to your left knee and lean over to the side. And it's only just small movements. So with the ankle that you've got up on the other leg, that's the side you're leaning to. So if it's your right leg that's up, you go to the right hand side. Over and go quads. Or come down onto your forearms so it's easier to rest and keep your body in a better position. One leg at a time. If you want to make it a bit more intense, you can pin and stretch. So you bend your leg and extend your leg. So you find that point, it's about the middle of your quad. And you bend and extend.
That's sick of it.
Looking for your little end bit. You're looking at this going, hey, what?
Don't touch it.
To help sort of start releasing a little bit further into the hips, I mean, you could work around the actual psoas, but if you come up towards your iliacus muscle as well, you can find where that point is if someone actually has that soreness trigger point in there. So it sort of depends when you're going through. Some people may or may not, depending on what restrictions that they've been dealing with. If they sit down a lot and that, then they can develop through there. But we can use it just as a little bit of gentle release in that point, or we can do the same thing down into your psoas muscle as well. Not trying to drive this right through her. She's not a vampire. We don't need to stake her, but just a little bit of weight from your hand resting on it just to create that release into the muscle as well. Like I said, on the trigger point day, we'll go through a lot of different tools. With your pec minor, you're looking just off here to the side. You got pec muscle come up a little bit higher, about an inch or so, and it's just off near where your armpit is almost, but not quite in there. And you find that most people have, I can feel this sort of ropey, can you feel that when I move my fingers? There's a real ropey sort of feeling on his muscle. So you sort of work around this area here almost where your armpit joins up to your pec, and you'll find some people will be usually quite painful in there. some not. When you're working with that, what you can do is some like flossing style movements or pinning and stretching through it. So if I come along, bring his arm right out to the side and I keep a gooseneck on his wrist, it helps expose that muscle that little bit further while I'm keeping pressure in it, and I can just gently go forward and back and just gradually, so do this about 5 or 6 times, gradually trying to pull it back further. And you'll find after about 5 or 6 times, with very little effort, you'll almost get his wrist to touch the ground.
Yeah, you could push it. You got it back.
So you just find where it starts to get that little bit of resistance against you pushing it. So they call the point of bind. You don't want to really just shove it through that. And I'm just keeping a little bit of pressure on the tool to keep the weight there.